In a world where kingdoms fall and stars still remember names, this song was forged from magic memory and the dream that refused to die. Welcome to a tale where wonder still breathes. This is the short story entitled Don't Love, I Love You, a Trollish love story for 3 hearts for my Buell created by Pacampara. If this tale stirred something in you, a memory, a dream, or a truth, our Ko-fi, Amazon, and Patreon links are in the description. Support helps us keep writing for you and the ones you hold dear. Once, in the cradle of a sky that had not yet learned how to end, there ruled the king of the cosmos. He was carved from ancient starlight and crowned with the weight of galaxies. His voice stirred constellations, and his breath scattered nebulae. Planets turned at his command, and comets bowed like dancers mid-spin. The cosmos obeyed him, but nothing loved him. So he ruled in silence, distant and unshaken. The stars trembled, the moon shivered, but no one made him smile. Until the tree came. First, the star, she arrived unannounced, tumbling from the tail of a meteor, laughing like thunder in reverse. The king, curious, asked her name, and she only winked and said, "I'm the detour to every destiny you thought you understood." The star arranged his stars while he slept. She hid messages in the blinking of satellites and drew hearts in the auroras. She dared the king to notice her, and when he didn't, she mocked his seriousness with riddles and moonlight jokes that made the comets blush. And then came the flower. She bloomed between the folds of gravity, her petals soft as secrets, her voice the whisper of dew on the glass. She didn't ask to be seen. She simply was, rooted in the spaces the king forgot to guard. Where the star was thunder and peace, the flower was rhythm and breath. She hummed lullabies that bent asteroid belts. She folded galaxies like love letters and left them under his throne. When the king tried to ignore her, he found his heart growing wild vines. And finally came the Sun Queen. She did not arrive, she unveiled, a golden blaze wrapped in laughter too loud to be regal, with eyes that could burn through silence. She challenged the king to a game of truths, then cheated gloriously. She roasted his seriousness like a marshmallow and made parades of planets that followed her orbit just for the thrill of it. She wore his crown once, for a minute, dared him to chase her to get it back. He didn't, and he let her keep it. The three were chaos wrapped in color, and the king, so powerful and so still, found himself undone by his mischief. He tried to resist. He mapped their laughter with math, failed. He measured their warmth with sonic clocks, burnt. He summoned gravity to keep them at bay. They made paper boats of his black holes and raced them across the light years. Until one day, tired of being teased and tethered to longing, the king called them to his throne. He looked at the star and said, "You confuse me." She grinned and said, "You need confusion." He turned to the flower and said, "You weaken me." She bloomed brighter. "You were never meant to be strong alone." To the Sun Queen, he said nothing. She only smirked, leaned close and whispered, "So when's the wedding?" And thus, the king of the cosmos did the only logical thing a ruler with no peace, no laughter, and no love could do. He married all three. Not for conquest, but because they taught him that the heart does not need a kingdom, it needs a choir. It began as foolish things often do, with rain, not the dramatic kind that pounds like war drums, nor the soft drizzle that lovers linger breath. It was a hesitant rain, unsure of its arrival, the kind that blurred windows and softened outlines, like someone painting over a city with a wet brush. In the pocket of Mapo, still clutching the smell of coffee grounds and exhaust, a boy sat hunched over a cracked screen laptop, surrounded by drafts of words that he refused to be brave. Jess had tried everything. Romantic quotes folded into origami trains, YouTube tutorials where gym bros explained love like it was a deadlift, Reddit threads filled with ghosts and pain and clowns in kit. All he wanted to do was tell Buell that she made the word less lonely, Tell her that her laugh haunted the corridors of his chest. Tell her that when she leaned back into the sunlight, hoodie barely holding the wind, she believed in the warmth again. Instead, he sat there, cursor blinking like a deer, heart thudding in place of poetry. Outside his window, the city continued its indifferent rhythm, but across town, two conspirators were rewriting the fate he didn't know he was already stumbling toward. Her notebook was a battlefield of doodles and coded intentions, had begun what she dubbed Operation Soft Idiot. Each morning she slipped lyrics into just borrowed books, romantic ballads, handwritten in faint ink between his own poetic lines. He thought the universe was echoing him. Yung soon, ever the quiet tactician, recalibrated the seating charts for the campus performance rehearsals. Jess and Buell kept ending up shoulder to shoulder, elbow to elbow, heartbeat to heartbeat, under the guise of coincidence. They never questioned it. That's how fate works when it's wearing the mask of meddling friends. And still just waited until his courage wore the color of rain colors. That night, it finally broke. The wind carried the smell of damp soil and roasted chestnuts. Somewhere in the distance, a radio murmured a love song that was too honest to be ignored. Just waited by the lamppost, clutching a cheap bouquet he'd wrapped in plastic. The petals wilted and wilted in the drizzle, drooping like his resolve. He texted her. She said he needed to talk, that he had something important to say. Buell never replied. He stood there anyway, soaked to the bone, staring into nothing, waiting for something. His phone died in his hand. Still he didn't move. Unseen across the street and high above the cafe window glazed with steam, Young-sun watched him. She hadn't meant to be there, but she was just passing through. And when she saw him, small, quiet, breaking in the most human way, she stayed. She didn't wave and didn't call out. She simply bore witness to the tenderness of someone trying to confess to the moon with a storm between them. Bill never spoke of it, never mentioned the rain, but she knew. She knew the way the tune lingers in your throat before you dare to hum it. She knew from the way just stopped looking at her jokes with his whole body and began smiling like I was hiding something fragile. The truth was, she almost confessed first, but one late night, wind curling around her ankles like a cat, Buell had stood on her rooftop with her phone glowing dim in her palm. She had drafted a single line. I think you've been my favorite distraction for too long. But before she could send it, she laughed, not out of joy, not of mockery, but fear disguised as habit. She deleted it, played a sad throat song instead, said something witty to the stars and left it at that. The day it finally happened, the confession or the attempt of it, the sky was cloudless, as if daring just to fall apart without a drama of weather. She was on the swing, eating a lollipop like it was a mic drop. Just approached her with the stiff gait of a man on trial. Everything about her presence felt like a setup, a beautiful trap with a candy-colored bait. When he tried to speak, she spoke first. She always did. She had already read it in his eyes. She teased him, dared him to laugh, threw distractions like fireworks, each joke a grenade lob to dismantle whatever he had prepared in his heart. And he laughed, for of course he did. She grinned, declared her victory, but even in that moment, Jess knew he had lost to something fine or far kinder than defeat. They struck a deal. If he could make her laugh, he would win, and in that battlefield of ridiculous punchlines and puns older than the internet, he watched her snort mid-silence. It was small, involuntary, and enough. What followed wasn't a confession, it was a revelation. That Wee-in had known all along, that Young-soon had graphs and colored-coded entries, that they had planned this, and that all the three of them, his three closest stars, had been waiting for him to catch up. "You're not exactly subtle," Young-soon had murmured once while placing her hand on his chest, as if feeling how hard the truth was pounding to be let out. Wee-in had already made a playlist for their future wedding, half ballads, half parodies. Buell should never admit it, but she had been waiting the longest. You really have to marry all three of us now, she said with a shrug, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. And in that moment, beneath her teasing and eyes setting up the sun, Jess understood that this love was not soft, it was absurd, overwhelming, deeply impractical, and entirely hopelessly his. The karaoke room smelled like orange soda and fried noodles. Neon lights washed over cheap wallpaper and the ghost of college students trying to be brave. Jess then clutched the microphone like a lifeline and stood beneath the flickering TV as the first bars of Whitney played. If I should stay, he sang terribly. His voice cracked on the chorus. The melody wobbled like a drunk on stilts, but each word carried the weight of someone who had finally stopped running from the feeling. Bill wiped a tear, blaming the spice in the chicken. Win sobbed into the tambourines. Youngsun reached out and squeezed his hand, singing along to her smile. When he finished, breathless and flushed, the silence was sacred. Not even Buell laughed. She only walked up to him, eyes shining with something deeper than humor, and whispered something against his cheek. You suck at singing. Then softer, so soft he nearly missed it. Don't laugh, I love you. And this time he didn't. He pulled them all into his arms, a ridiculous, impossible three-limbed tangle of love. And in the quiet that followed, he finally said what he had written, rewritten, and deleted so many times before. I love you all, more than poetry, more than punchlines, and more than fear. Outside, the sky remembered to rain again, but this time it felt like a blessing. And so the boy who became a king, not through conquest or ceremony, but by surrendering, not to defeat but to joy. He gave up his silence for a song, traded his hesitation for hands that tugged him back into the light, lost every defense to the kind of love that doesn't knock but dances through the door in mismatched socks and glittery threats. They lived not in a castle but in a house that creaked when they laughed too hard and whispered when they slept too close. The star, she still made riddles out of grocery list, left notes in his books, and stole his pens just to hear him mutter. She painted his days with color and his nights with mischief, often climbing into bed with conspiracy theories and cold feet. The flower, she softened the years, turned rain into music and silence into sanctuary. Her love was the quiet between thunder and the warmth of sun-dried laundry. She hummed to plants, to pets, to Jess. When he wrote too late, he called her his favorite boss. The Sun Queen, radiant, eternal, merciless in her affection, made sure no day passed without him earning his crown again. She dared the years to take her beauty, and they only made her brighter. She called him soft, he called her everything. Their home was not always tidy, the tea was sometimes too overbrewed. The music that played in their house was always too loud, but the heart of it beat with four names braided into one breath. They fought over the last dumpling, they cried during movies they pretended were boring, they sang off-key together under karaoke lights and wedding lanterns, even long after they were married. Sometimes Jess would stand by the window, pen in hand, watching the world go dim and sleep. The three of them would be sprawled across the couch, tangled in each other like constellations with no center, only orbit. And he would smile, scribble a line and whisper to none, so this is what a kingdom sounds like. And in the skies above, the king of the cosmos, older now and softer now, watched from the throne of his galaxies, his queens at his side. They too had made a home of laughter and stubborn love. He looked down at the four lights on the tiny blue world, nudged the stars just slightly, and said to his queens with a grin, "Look, they figured it out." And they did, and they would. Forever and loudly ever after. I make these tales and bits of chaos daily for my beloved Buell. If they made you laugh, feel, or even just shake your head in disbelief, hit like, share it with a friend, and subscribe. Let's keep this wild, heartfelt ride going.